of, hey, the subwoofer's burnt, aren't you going to warranty it?
Yeah, and a closed circuit isn't necessarily a perfect circuit. Under amperage is actually a huge problem with amplifiers.
So thinking that, you know, man, my subs are burnt, you know, when I get it in there, is this going to be warranty? Instead of even thinking in that manner, think of why would my subwoofer have burned, or two subwoofers specifically. That is a real big clue for somebody right there. When both subwoofers burn, damn it, man. One, you could understand it, you know, some, you know, faulty wiring, or hell, even a manufacturer defect. It's always a possibility that something may arise a bit later that was due to a defective part or whatnot that still would not have shown up until it was worn in, or, you know, it was a little bit less than perfect and will show up later. Always taken into consideration when the subwoofer comes in, it's going to tell us exactly what had happened. And if it is due to manufacturer defect, you know, it's going to get covered, dude. So don't think like in terms of no warranty. That is the biggest cop-out that I've ever heard from dealers and from end users. It is not a cop-out on our part, because why take blame and take it's like pleading NOLO in court and still paying for the fucking court fees, you know, when there's no burden of, you know, the burden of guilt is on the court, if I'm not mistaken. But yet they try to put the burden of proof of innocence on you, you know. The thing to do, you know, is to find out, of course, what happened with a subwoofer if you don't want it to happen again.
Well, as far as your amps go, the one surefire way is to run both your positive and your ground straight from the battery terminals all the way to the amplifier.
Cha-ching! And if you ask our guys there at DD, any of our technical guys, they tell you to do this. This is something that I do, my roommate Marty does, on every install.
You're actually surprised.
Always a front to back ground.
A vehicle is not one solid chunk of metal from front to the back. So if you think about all the different areas where one piece of metal is welded to another, and that one's welded to another, as you get to the back of the vehicle, or presumably your amplifier is, that's actually quite a bit of resistance. That's not really an equivalent of any thick gauge of wire if you think about using your vehicle as ground. I mean, hell, in the CRX, I'm using 6 0-gauge grounds and 6 0-gauge positives.
I'm sure you've done a test, maybe I'm not sure. Okay, I'm unsure that you guys have done a test.
Maybe.
For one, just continuity, you know, front to back. So you put the meter lead up there at the front, you put a meter lead at the back on the chassis, and beep, the multimeter should beep when it's on the impedance / continuity check. That just tells you there is continuity.
Yeah,
it has no idea what your impedance is at the time, but you can check the actual impedance or potential for ground.
Well, you could use that same test and put the test leads on either side of a resistor, and you're still going to get that beep.
That's right. You know, and that's what your car is one big resistor. From front to back. The further away you get, just like if you were using cable, the higher the resistance is. And you can normally take any car, any vehicle's chassis, measure front to back, and then do a pair of 4 gauges. And if you want to measure the impedance, you're going to end up with a lower impedance using the power wire than you are or the ground wire than you are the chassis of the vehicle.
Well, so the difference in impedance might not be that much different as far as numbers are concerned, but the transfer of current from point A to point B is going to be phenomenally different.
So you got, what is it, the voltmeter? Sorry. Use, damn it, man, it seems intuitive, but use that multimeter. I mean, your multimeter is going to help you get through everything. A clamp meter is the last little thing that you're going to need, you know, to give you all the information that you need when you're designing a system, when you're diagnosing system problems. And think of the sound system as just like an engine part. I mean, there's maintenance involved with a sound system, and the more violent it is, think of your sound system then as the engine on a drag car. You know, you're trying to get 500 horsepower out of that little bastard in the trunk, and you've got, you know, your little 100 horsepower thing in the front of the car. So you're just asking your high-performance vehicle to be a high-performance vehicle in another category. But it is a race car back there when you start going into real big high-power setups. And the more energy that is transferred to the chassis of that vehicle, the parts and whatnot of the vehicle, the more problems the vehicle is going to have. And the loosening ground tends to be the biggest problem that we help our customers and our dealers diagnose. They think that a seat bolt was the crap, you know, it was absolutely the best. And you can find that, you know, as the car gets beat to death, they find that the ground came loose, you know, and it's something that they never would have thought. Then a lot of people think that
it's just another bolt.
Well, that you're making fun of their ability, or you're down talking their damn it, man, I'm at a loss for words. Sorry. That you're saying that their install capability or their install quality is low because a ground could come loose. So it's almost like you're pointing fingers at them, and it's not them. I'm saying that the ground comes loose in cars. You know, you've got to maintain your audio system. It's just like changing oil in your high-performance vehicle. And the more horsepower you make, normally the more often you want to change the oil in the car.
Or just do regular maintenance on it.
Right, so your sound system, check it over. Make a checklist. If you need a checklist, dude, I'll put the shit on the website in a heartbeat. Here's what you need to do to check your amplifier. Here's what you need to do to check, you know, your enclosure to make sure it's not blown apart. You know, all these, there's small things that are maintenance things for your sound system that really do need to happen, and a lot of people don't. And those are the ones that, you know, the guys who have those problems, those are the first ones to come over to you and, you know, almost point fingers. They don't want to point fingers, but what if it happens kind of often? You know, then they would want to point fingers at you, and I'm talking specifically to dealers at this point. They come to you, you know, it's your fault. It's your fault that this shit's going on here and there. So you need to look at, if the ground has come loose once, don't you think it's going to come loose again, you know, if you do the exact same thing? So let's say you tighten it up. Whoop, wasn't it tight the first time? You would tell yourself that you did it right the first time. Oh, wow, the ground came loose. You know, it's not some magical thing. It's going to come loose if it wasn't set up to stay tight. If your crimp itself was kind of shitty, you can bet when that thing's beat to death, you got a 4-gauge or an aught-gauge wire going into a crimp, and that aught-gauge wire has quite a bit of mass on a long run of it. Well, if that thing's not securely fastened to the floor or wherever your ground is, then the wire vibrates. And the longer that wire is without having anything fastening it down, more than likely the more mass at a longer distance you have, which equates to torque, essentially. Think of torque on a bolt. It will vibrate itself more and more loose within that crimp joint. And there's one that I see quite often whenever I'm going back behind other shops and seeing it. And I hate to point fingers at other shops because it seems like every dealer seems to do that, you know, because everybody can screw up. Think of that. The more you point at another one means that you found shit with your own work, you know what I mean? And come behind and find that your grounds are loose, or oops, you ran, you know, this too small of a wire and shit's getting hot and you got burn marks in your carpet or whatnot. Everybody has screwed up here and there. But to find a ground that has come loose or a wire that has pulled loose from its fastener.
One thing you can do is you can melt solder all over your ring terminals.
And tin it, you know, tin the solder or tin the ring terminal, and then put your thing in there and just pour the solder into it. And that will keep that joint from coming loose. Using star washers is my favorite thing in the damn world. Like an internal and external locking star washer. Get those. They come in all sizes. They got teeth on the outside. If you haven't seen them, it looks like a sunflower sort of. And it bites, you know, with 40 times the surface area of a regular lock washer. And you can use these on bolts, on screws, you know, panhead style screws, and create a really, really good ground and lock. Fastener specifically that doesn't come loose very easily. And then spot weld that bitch.